Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I will be bragging, taking a look, uh, shouting in glee that I have got a early preview copy of Moonray Book 2, Echoes of Ascension, put out by Living the Line itself. This is Living the Line family member Brandon Graham, along with his friend Xurxo G. Penalta. Sean's on production on this, putting this out. It's a beautiful book and a follow up to the first Moonray that Living the Line put out. This is also world building for a video game and possibly animation series that's coming out. Moonray started as a video game concept, and Brandon was hired to come in and make the comic as kind of like building in the mythology for the world. My understanding of the video game is it's a fighting game, but there's so many like game type mechanisms in the book. It's hard for me to imagine this being just a fighting game because Brandon just has so many different fascinating ideas. I told Tori after I read this that I just feel lucky to be friends with someone as like genius and visionary as Brandon is. He's even the parts that Xurxo's drawing, Brandon's writing it, and it's got his ideas behind it. And also just seeing someone like Brandon, who I already consider like a singular voice, very well defined style. Like you can't get too close to it without just being like you're trying to rip off Brandon. Seeing him continue to evolve his work is amazing to me and inspiring. Like there's so many new tricks that Brandon, or so many things that Brandon has done little bits of in the past that he's using to create effects here that just create whole new looks. Like Brandon is exploring more minimal designs throughout. Like I love this opening sequence. It's not a whole city full of posters and stuff like he would used to do, but he's gone the other way to these stripped down beautiful poetic images. And you got to be good. You got to be really good to strip down your images. It's easy to wow people with lots of details, but to create a composition this beautiful with so few lines and colors is really, yeah, this is, top flight stuff. And so a lot of what Brandon's doing that's new in this is dropping the blackout, colorizing his line art for one thing, and then using just shapes to represent things without outlines. And you get these beautiful, like this opening sequence here, Moonray Chapter 6, you get these beautiful fog sequences. And Brandon's color sense is totally shining through on this. His design sense is showing through. Just really stunning work, picking up where he left off in Volume 1 and pushing the art even further and more beautiful, I think, and then pushing a lot of the ideas in the book as well. There's some really, really cool moments where Brandon flashes into more intense colors, and that's really nice as well. There's these nice rhythms of colors throughout the book, some really beautiful page designs, also some really cool character design. I mean, every character in here is a super cool design. Nothing's very human. You have Adam here, the man of Miem, who's the main character. The kind of acting and emotion that Brandon's able to get out of something with no face, that's just kind of like a simple avatar here, is really impressive. The designs of these creatures, this crazy goddess creature Iltar, who's the goddess that Adam worships, this new man, the man of Miem, is basically like this 4 or 5 headed angel creature thing here. That's so cool. There's in this book very much a look at how the world's going to work post humanity in terms of identity. This is something that I keep coming back to in a lot of things, and I think it's at the core of a lot of Brandon's work, his interest in personal identity versus, like individualism versus collectivism, how identity functions. So you have a evil force called the Hive, which is kind of like a hive mind where you don't have individuals, and they are greedy for the Miem, which is the life force. I also like this idea that characters are actually made out of like their life force stuff. So you can lose part of yourself and lose part of your life force. Again, interesting game mechanism there, that you can gain and lose parts of your energy or actually your body. But awesome, typical Brandon Graham like design of an alien world here, where he can go detailed. He can show you all of that stuff if he wants to. Another one here where they go down into an underground realm. We have a video of this one showing how Brandon's worked with coloring on this one. So kind of dissecting and going through, like excavating through the layers on his files. Um, Again, another really like detailed, dense, rich Brandon Graham world. I remember when we were talking to Brandon about it, he's saying that he's thinking about things like, hey, there's all these like little potato people here, and there's these glowing fungus things, and so maybe they would have hats or lamps made out of the fungus. Any page that you turn to has a really thought out, fully conceptualized world on it, is what it feels like. And Brandon, when I first encountered Brandon's work, I always liked his art, but his stories did give me a hard time because he's so willing to like blow through an entire civilization in 3 pages and then move on to another one, that at first I found that confusing or exhausting. But the more familiar I get with Brandon's work, the more I'm just in awe of his internal sense of scale, not just in terms of drawings where like this is the main character and we're focused on environment, so scale in that sense, but the scale of his and scope of his stories. I think Prophet and then Moonray is becoming a good second example, but Prophet being the best example, where you're talking about a story that took place covering the entire universe. And so a society being like, you could throw a whole society away in 3 pages is like, yeah, that's kind of irrelevant on the grand scale of things. And Brandon just thinks in that scope with all of his work, and it's so impressive to me. As I've learned how to like just let myself get immersed in that better. It was hard for me to do at first, but that's what I was telling Tori. I was like, man, I just feel so lucky and so honored to have a friend who's has that it living in his head. Like, like I'm so jealous of that he has those worlds. Some more things that I'm not sure I've ever seen in Brandon's work is some more play with lettering. I really like these like brushy calligraphic letters that he's doing here. Some play with like collaging textures going into the work, which is really cool. In terms of like setting up for a fighting game, you can see Brandon also creating these other characters that Adam is fighting. So these really strange looking kind of creatures who have their different weapons and movement mechanisms. It's really cool. There's one when I talked about the Moonray sketchbook where there's a character that's like 2 bodies, and it will flip depending on if it's peaceful or at war. And again, that's just looking at the idea, like he's building the idea of identity into the design of the characters as well, that there's like two bodies to house 2 different parts of the personality. So just really cool ideas all throughout. Some pages like this that are just absolutely gorgeous. Again, like very, very sparse, but you have to be so good at drawing and so good at composition and so good at choosing colors to make images like this with so much empty space over here work and feel as beautiful as this. And then again, another one of these things that this should be like a mechanism in the game where you've got this whole like stack of these floating cubes of water, and Adam is swimming up them and then jumping from one to the next. And then just the way that's composed on this page is just so gorgeous. So this book is full of all kinds of cool stuff like that. We get introduced to a new female character named Elix. You can see her here. A lot more of the really cool coloring going on with the dropped out line work, the foggy colors, really cool representation of music here in the lettering with like a 2 color going on. Almost looks like it would float 3D if you had 3D glasses on. Just lots of cool stuff going on in here. Some very abstract pages where again Brandon's using color almost primarily to kind of tell the form, and then some more of the really interesting stuff going on with collage in the backgrounds. I particularly like this sequence where Brandon's, and I think this must be like Brandon working with Sean learning about different production techniques and stuff, because the way this image is like broken up into the tones is very interesting. In particular, like it seems like these are all broken up into different color layers and printed out not in like a halftone pattern, but like some kind of strange stochastic pattern to render this, but like the pattern's visible, so it almost looks like a dot tone pattern in a manga, but colorized as well. Seems just like really strange to me compared to anything else that Brandon has done, but it also looks really cool and gives a really strange like textural quality to the weather that Brandon's showing in here. And so to see someone like Brandon, who in my mind has such a well-defined style, like still finding where he can push it and not just like settling on his haunches, about what that could be. Also you can see being really careful planning that around where the signatures are at, so you get like the whole spread right here in the middle. Just some really beautiful ideas throughout. And then you get Xurxo's contribution here. This is written by Brandon, but drawn by Xurxo Penalta. And Xurxo's art is equally amazing to Brandon, different in quality in that the coloring is much more intensely detailed, like and textured and gone through, and like all these little ticky marks, but that same just absolute visionary quality. You can see this awesome drawing of like these strange structures that these aliens are making here. We're following a totally different character that's at least so far divorced from the main chunk of the story that's following Adam, but you get introduced to this larger world. And in talking to Brandon, I think we're going to start seeing some other people contributing to the Moonray world. One of the things that I really like about Brandon's work is it always has this collaborative bent to it with Island and Prophet, and you just have a lot of these things where he likes the collaborative part of comics, and it's inspiring to me, and I think going to inform some of the things I do coming forward. Xurxo has some really interesting compositional ideas here as well. You have this like weird floating manta ray penis dolphin creature here that the guy's writing, and to create this movement of like they hit this ramp and then flip upside down, and then you're looking down at this seething mass of like arrows that's chasing them, this creature that's made out of these components. So again, like an individual that's made out of a collective. That's part of the idea of this character. All of these arrows are like individual pieces of technology that makes this bigger thing. Super cool there. But the mechanism of like following this character, you kind of have like multiple spirals. You have like the spiral here, and then you have like the actual spiral here, and then you have this bigger spiral that leads to flipping the character around. So a really good sense of like motion, and you kind of go flip, flip, flip 3 times. Really cool stuff. So beautiful. Both sections of the book are beautiful and interesting. And then in the back, you get some pretty typical, revealing, interesting Brandon Graham diary comics. Sean's got a book. Sean and Brandon are working on a book of Brandon's diary comics as well. But this particular one is about working on Moonray and what sets it apart from his different projects that he's done in the past. And he talks about, like in other works, I like to make him cluttered. In this one, it's intentionally about focusing on physical acting and the exploration of nature. So these more wide open spaces, talking about wanting to put more nature and weather into the comics. So those are all things that he's actively thinking about. But Brandon is such a great cartoonist and like an obsessive formalist like me that he thinks about, probably even more of an obsessive formalist than me, definitely more thoughtful about it than I am. He's talking about like when working on a comic set in the modern day, you can show hints of things that the readers knows. You can show part of a record player and it will still be recognizable. But when you're telling a story in the far future with new future devices, you got to pull back and show the whole thing. Just that kind of like, that's, masterful. It should kind of be obvious, but it's not until you get in and you make a bunch of sci-fi books, and it's a really interesting thought that Brandon's just sharing with everyone else. It's like a secret that he's giving away. And then also cool to see Sean make an appearance in here. Joe Keaton, who's a really awesome guy that's been supporting Living the Line since Strange Death. He's been helping us. He's now the editor on this series, and I think working for the Moonray guys as well in another capacity. So just seeing Sean and Joe and Brandon all here is pretty cool. It's like that's what the family's doing, off on their part of the thing, and I'm over here doing my part of the thing. It's just real fun to be a part of all of this. And like I said, reading this, like just knowing these guys, being involved, getting to talk to them, getting to make videos with them, with people of this caliber, putting out this kind of beautiful work is just a real honor. And yeah, I don't promote this book because it's a Living the Line book. I talk about this book because I'm so happy that it's a Living the Line book. I feel honored that, what me and Sean started with Strange Death of Alex Raymond and the hair up my ass about a YouTube channel. Now I get to hang out with guys like Brandon Graham who are putting out work that I think, really has the potential to be the type of mythology we need for the 21st century. It really feels like it's going back with like this Adam and Eve type of thing, trying to at least open the gate for a post-human mythology as we walk into that world. I think more and more in the real world, we're going to need myths for it. And those myths should be healthy and positive. And I really, really think Brandon's doing one of the first major entries into that new canon with Moonray. So beyond just how stunning and beautiful it is, I think you'll be doing yourself a favor of getting in on the ground floor of helping be in that conversation about what those myths are by reading them and talking about them. So please go get yourself a copy of Moonray Book 2, Echoes of Ascension, and if you have not already, go get yourself a book 1 Moonray as well. I believe there's 5 volumes planned so far, and from what I've seen, volume 3 is damn well on its way to near being completed. So get in now. It's only going better and more interesting places from here. And from the growth I've seen in Brandon's art from volume 1 to this, volume 3, I'm sure it's going to be even crazier.